Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. If this is the first time you tune in, you'll want to know that this is the show that gives visibility to the top voices in consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond. We're now over 200 episodes in. Thanks, everyone, for your support over the years. And remember to go into your favorite podcast player or website to entertain yourself and be educated with some of the amazing guests that we've had over the years. Remember, we are part of a family of podcasts, which is headed by the CPG guys in the US. So if you want to learn about what's happening in consumer goods at the other side of the Atlantic, go to their show. And also, if you haven't yet, remember to follow us on LinkedIn, where you'll join a community of 18,000 members and counting. Maybe by the time this airs, we will already be at 19. I'm not sure. So today, unfortunately, Efrain and Christina were not able to join, but I brought a superstar guest co-host today, and it's no other than e-commerce leader, Veronica Demschik. Veronica, how are you?
I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
Who would have said that when we first spoke that we would end up co-hosting a podcast?
Nobody, but it's such a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So I know that you were just in Unboxed in Germany, Amazon Unboxed. How was that?
It was an amazing event, super insights on the industry and what's going on upper funnel, but also really nitty-gritty in the AMC, Amazon Cloud. So really the combination of both having this vision, but also what you can actually apply to your account and to your brand.
So one to go to next year, maybe for me, no? One to put
Absolutely.
on. Okay. I'm not traveling enough lately, so we'll have to put that one in the list of places to go. However, you and me, Veronica, we normally exchange notes on events, the industry, but normally related to FMCG and e-commerce. However, I brought you in today to go out of your comfort zone to speak about a very different topic, which is sustainability and more in the apparel and clothing area. What are your thoughts on the topic?
So I fell in love with the outdoors when I lived in the UK, and we were out every weekend hiking. So really love the outdoors and know what a difference it actually can make when you have the right gear on. So it's super great to be having this conversation with Mammut and learning a little bit more about the sustainability because that's a super key driver for this industry.
Absolutely. So I think we're in for a treat today because, as you mentioned, Mammut is the brand that's coming today, and it's one of the leading mountain brands. And we have not one, but two of their senior executives. On one side, we have Michael Rammelsberger, who's their Chief Supply Chain Officer. And on the other side, we have Tobias Steinegger, who's their Head of Corporate Responsibility. Hi, guys. How are you? Thanks for joining.
Hi, Veronica. Hi, Daniel. Yeah, really pleasure to be here and super excited to talk about this topic.
Also from my side. Hello, Daniel. Hello, Veronica. Really happy to be here.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for daring to come to the show, to the FMCG land. Michael, I have to say, after what? We should double check, but I think we've known each other for a good 10 years. As I said to Veronica, even more so, who would have said we would end up recording a podcast together?
Absolutely, yeah. 10 years at least of fantastic relationship, great exchange, great challenge as well of each other. So really a pleasure to talk about this today in this podcast. Yeah, heard a lot about it. So fantastic.
We've done well enough in the last 10 years. We've done well enough. I think that we can look back with a smile of how it's been and how we've learned and what we've learned. I've definitely learned a lot. So, guys, can you tell us a bit about Mammut and what makes it so special as a company? I don't know if Tobias, you want to start on your take. Like, what is Mammut, and then what makes it special?
I think as a Swiss person myself, Mammut has quite a long history and I have childhood memories, go climbing with my dad for the first time in my first Mammut harness. So I always had a bit this relationship of had a bit of the back in my mind to kind of at one day I want to work for the brand. And I think still at this point in time, Mammut stands for high quality gear, lots of experience and kind of fun things you can do with the things, and still keeping a lot of the Swiss values in it. And I think that makes it super nice, bridging this international brand, but with also Swiss heritage kind of matching together.
What about you, Michael? I know that you're not Swiss originally. So what since you joined Mammut also at a senior level, like what have you liked of the brand?
Yeah, for me, personally, I have to say, for me, Mammut is like coming home. So when I started my career 30 years back, I was in mountain infantry. So I started in the military. So I was out there in the winter, in the summer, in the mountains. And I would have loved to have the gear that we have today. And over the last 30 years, I have many different positions from management consulting via working for Adidas and Hugo Boss, always in operations roles. And therefore coming now to Mammut as a brand where I can really combine my passion for the mountains, my personal aspiration with the purpose of the brand to create love for mountains. I think that's just a unique opportunity. And as Tobias was saying, this unique combination of Swissness and the aspiration to provide the best for our consumers, our athletes out there, but also doing that in a responsible way, I think is not unique, but the combination of performance and responsibility is unique. Yeah. So therefore, it's a great thing to be part of that company.
Brilliant. Tobias, can you tell me a little bit more about your career background and your current role?
Of course. I don't have such a long background as Michael, of course, but kind of.
You are a bit younger in your defense as well.
Of course, I'm a few years younger than Michael is. Anyway, but I started mainly, or I have a background in craftsmanship. So I started as an electrician, and kind of through this being an electrician, never imagined go study or kind of work in sustainability. But after a while, I got interested in all these topics around renewable energy, and then kind of moved over into study environmental engineering, and have now like finalized a master's in environmental science, which kind of brings the passion of sustainability and kind of the knowledge. And after my studies, I kind of had to decide where I want to end up. And talking about my childhood memories and being a Swiss myself, it was time for me then to move back to Switzerland into this. Back then, it was a role in as a sustainability analyst. And now I have the pleasure since the 1st of January that I lead the sustainability team, which I always say it's a small but a mighty team under Michael's wings. And I think it's a great role to be, a lot to move, interesting times, sustainability at the brand, which I love. I think combines everything I could hope for.
Awesome. And Michael, I mean, it feels strange to ask you this question because I've known you for so long, but can you tell us a bit about like your career leading up to your role and what your role currently means at Mammut?
Yeah. So what does the role actually mean? So when we talk about supply chain at Mammut, it basically starts when our friends from the commercial teams, they provide their forecasts, and we take this, our growth ambitions, and then translating it into a demand plan, a supply plan. And then with our colleagues from the product team, we start the purchasing process, obviously, and then get the products in via all the versus logistics processes, transportation, warehouse distribution. And then at the end, obviously, shipping our goods to our customers. Sometimes things are also returned back. And what is maybe unique or not unique, but what we also decided within the supply chain, that 3 important components are also part of it. One is quality management, to also ensure that we have that also separate, some sort of the guardian of the quality, which is utmost important for us as one of the leading mountain brands, because if you have devices where your life can be dependent on, so that's one of the most important things we need to ensure. Second, it is corporate responsibility, what Tobias is leading, because we also think that you need some operational home. It is not a strategy team, or it's not somewhere in the CEO office where you keep corporate responsibility, but it needs to be rooted in operations. So therefore, we found this quite powerful. And last but not least is now the new word is circularity. It's a huge word, but what we do is primarily repairing and caring of our products. So that's also part of the supply chain, because we can also then close the loop in somehow that consumer feedback that we get, guarantee repairs, or we have people who love their gear and after 20 years, they still send back their jacket and say they want to have it repaired versus I buy a new one. So that gives fantastic insights into our products and the lifetime and how we can extend it. And combining all of this into the supply chain is quite a unique opportunity also to run that business. And all this experience, bringing it back to the first ideas, creative ideas. And this is how we then really try to live circularity, or also closing the loop, how we call it, to have one approach which gives us the opportunity to grow on the one hand side, but also do this in a most sustainable way. And asking how I get there, obviously, as I said, I started in the military. And then I think when I had my really first experience was with Adidas. I think a brand is well known for their sustainability roots, I would say, and also combining that very early on. And I think over the last, I would say 20 years, it's a huge transformation from sustainability being identified as a must-have. Second, it is identified as it could be a competitive advantage, and in the meantime, it's a hygiene factor. And for us, it is not even a hygiene factor anymore, because if people buy the brand Mammut and they pay, let's say, 800 Swiss francs for an outdoor jacket, they simply expect that whatever they have in hand is highest quality, and at the same time, it fulfills all the corporate responsibility and all the sustainability requirements. They don't want to even have a question about it or doubt it, but simply say it comes with the brand. And I think we are in this era now where it has outgrown the path of being a competitive advantage or a buying advantage for consumers. It is simply an expectation that you can fail, but you cannot really even meet anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much. That sounds super interesting. And I would be really interested in if you look back a couple of years where you saw CSR being now one of the key components in your role as a Chief Supply Chain Officer. How would you say, like, let's say 5 or 10 years back, you would have seen this movement towards this?
I would say it is really a transformational journey, and it has started in some areas of some companies, I'd say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now it is rooted. And I guess what we have done at Mammut, and I can say this, that it's an integrated part of the business strategy. So sometimes it was, do you have a corporate responsibility or sustainability strategy, and you have a corporate strategy, and they were more or less next to each other for us. And I think that's how we decided to do this. It's an integrated part. You've seen this with reporting requirements over the last years that have arisen, that it is there even on the financial side, it is included. But from a pure strategy and implementation perspective, this is also what has happened. And we have our strategy, which is called WeCare, and Tobias can give you more insights into it. But it is integrated part of the business strategy at Mammut. And we are some sort of the guardians that all of the things that are important, we are some sort of the supervisors, helpers, coaches of our teams, because we cannot change the world, but our company can. So we talk to the people in design, in development, in logistics, in retail, so that they start these initiatives, and we just monitor if they are implemented. And last but not least, we also are one of the few companies who have one of the key elements, which is climate change and reaching our targets related to carbon emissions as part of our overall KPI and last but not least bonus scheme. So next to the regular net sales, profit, customer satisfaction, we have also now included one KPI, which is carbon intensity, where we are measuring that we are also going in the right direction. Because I guess that's a simple game. We still want to grow as a company. And if you want to grow, that means you produce more products. And at the end, these more products would also then create more emissions. And we need to decouple this. I guess that's the rule of the game. And to decouple our business growth from the emissions, this is a carbon intensity factor, which is part of the bonus scheme of every employee at Mammut. So this is deeply rooted and embedded in the operations and the strategy.
And Tobias, I know that you're responsible for CSR, so I need to ask you about this WeCare brand. Like, why did you actually create a brand for CSR, and what are the main parts of like this brand? What does it mean?
You named it. We decided back in 2018, it was even before my time, that we want to create our sustainability strategy as an integral part of the corporate strategy, but still have its own meaning and naming. Because what often happens is that sustainability is seen as very complex and kind of a lot of topics ranging from social impacts to people topics, internal, external, environmental topics. So it's broad. And we tried to bring it together in one strategy, and we created this kind of WeCare term, where each letter stands for one area of our strategy, and then we define the measures below. As an example, the V stands for everything regarding our own employees, our collaborations, our partnerships with external people within the industry. But then the C more leads into the term that Michael mentions, the circularity with repair, reduce, recycle, so different subtopics there. A stands for animal welfare, because as an outdoor brand, we do still have animal materials in our products, mainly down, leather, and wool, which have unique benefits. That's why we have them in the portfolio. But we want to treat them or source them in a responsible way. So it's all about certified materials and ensuring the best animal welfare possible this way. And the R stands for reduced impact, covering things like climate change, waste, energy, water, so chemical management, all the impacts, the footprint basically that we as a brand or a company have on the planet, and then ultimately on people, which also leads to ethical production, which is the last letter, the E. And this stands for everything along the supply chain, because textile industry has very complex and long supply chains. And we touch a lot of people's life with our products, not just after the point of sale, but actually also before the point of sale. So in production, in material production, and we want to ensure the highest possible social standards during our production. And that's why we created this brand. And it's also not a fixed thing. It's always kind of developing further. New topics come in, other topics maybe decrease a bit in relevancy. So I think there's a big revamp planned for our strategy next year. So stay tuned. But the scheme is going to stay the same, because it really.
So we'll have to have you again. We'll have to have you again on the show.
Yes, yes, we can come back, of course. Tell you more about that. But generally, this kind of WeCare, the brand, kind of guaranteed us that we got better internal buy-in. So having people motivated, but also much easier to transport and communicate externally to consumer about our actions.
Brilliant. So, Michael, you already talked a little bit or touched upon the climate strategy. How are you going about that, and how does it look like?
Yeah, even here, as it is such an important part, and also close to my heart as being a father of two daughters, looking into the future and how the climate is changing, and also being a mountaineer, if you're out there on the glaciers in summer, it really hurts. So therefore, the climate strategy is one part that we deliberately took out. And as I said, we are measuring our progress related to our carbon intensity. And even here, we have given it a name, which is called Do Our Best, Remove the Rest, because we need to, first of all, do whatever we can to reduce the impact on the one hand side. And then the second step would be to also remove the residual carbon emissions that are in the atmosphere. So this is how we approached it also very early on. I think we are one of the forerunners in the industry. I come to that in a second. But the most important part is to do our best. And here it comes back to also we've done an analysis based on science-based targets and what data is available. And for us, that actually means very, very concrete. We have 3 areas where we can really improve. So the one is, as Tobias also outlined, we have many, many processes, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, primarily the wet processes, which are highly energy intensive. And if you look in those countries where we produce, it's still coal is used, it's still gas, it's used, it's oil, it's used. So therefore, to move to renewable energies with our partners is one of the biggest levers that we will have. And that would mean that when we do negotiations as well or onboard suppliers, that's some sort of a critical criteria they have to meet. Not to say, okay, you have to reduce, but if you don't have solar panels on the roof, if you don't have a closed water recycling system, wastewater topic. So if you can't show us that this is really what you have already implemented or you're about to implement, so we'll not sign up a partnership with you. So that's one big bucket that I would say is the supplier energy, or in all terms, the energy consumption. The second part is our materials. So what materials we use, it's recycled materials, looking into the fibers that we're using, which are primarily as well technical fibers, oil-based. So what can we do to move away from this? Or when we use them, use recycled materials. And then the last part is obviously a circular business model, so that we try to prolong the life cycle of our products, that we can repair it, that we can reuse it. And then at the end, basically can deconstruct whatever we have sold and bring it back. It's not a full cradle to cradle approach yet. For some areas we try really hard. Ropes, for instance, so that you can really out of a returned rope from the climbing gym or from climbers, produce a new rope out of it, 100%. So that's our vision that we have. And I would just want to close because if you look at, and some on this podcast might be familiar with the different scopes of carbon emissions, but you need to understand that 98% of our emissions are scope 3. So we can all go by foot to the office. We can all cycle. We can all have LED lights in the office, but it will not help because 98% is not under our own control. So therefore, we need to partner up with our suppliers, with our partners, but as well with other brands in the industry to really to make a difference. And that's, let's say, the biggest part is do our best. And then the second part is remove the rest, where we teamed up with big corporations who are forerunners in the way of carbon capture, for instance, deforestation. So we are quite active in the industry, naming Climeworks, for instance, or Climate, where we have partnerships to also think already now how we can work on carbon reduction, not only, but as well really removing carbon out of the atmosphere. So that's then the remove the rest part once we have reduced whatever we can in the next couple of years.
And Michael, your background is obviously in operations and you're still running operations. So how does this like whole climate, CSR, do good to society scope impact your like operational job?
Yeah, I would say we try to follow the classical triple P approach. which is people, planet, and profit. And this is the balance that you have to find. As well, we are owned by a private equity company, and therefore there's huge expectations, obviously, on profit. And at the same time, we have our people who come to work every day, who are passionate about the brand, who are passionate about the mountains. And I guess that's some sort of the secret to success, that you don't need to motivate our staff to be responsible for what they do. They see it. They are out there in the mountains on the weekends, in the evenings. So therefore, there's some sort of an intrinsic motivation that you already find with the people who work for our brand. And then there's the planet. Yes. And I think it hurts if you see what's going on in the world. If you just look at the COP discussions in Azerbaijan, and that it's very clear that the 1.5 target will most likely we will overshoot. This is what they call it now. So that would mean it's unrealistic to get there. And we have people in charge on the political side who would say are not supporters of fighting against climate change and global warming. So I guess it is one of our tasks as a brand to ensure that we are forerunners. So I think we are not waiting for others to do it. I think we are a community as a company, but with all our consumers, clients, climbers, athletes out there who are like-minded. And I think we want to just, let's say, trailblaze the message and say, okay, we are convinced with many other partners in the industry, in the outdoor market, that that's the right thing to do. And if we would start stopping, I think that this would be a bad sign. And yes, it is also painful trade-offs. And I give you one example, a very practical example, air freight. For instance, air freight is horrible. It's expensive, and it is a huge damage to the environment. And we have our customers out there, and in the supply chain, things go wrong. So if everything is running according to plan, then we don't need air freight. Yeah. And then you are sitting there, and then you say, okay, we would be late to the market. We would lose market share. We have customers waiting for the product. And then you need to say, okay, what air freight can you still afford? What is justifiable in this case? And other brands, they said, we don't do air freight at all. And we said, yeah, we need to balance it. We need to balance it. You cannot say explicitly no. But as well, that just puts on the balance sheet of our decarbonization project just a couple of kilos or tons more. That at the end, then we need to get better in other areas to balance it out. So I think there's not one solution. It is always the balance. And in a balanced way, I guess we can drive the business forward while protecting the environment as much as we can.
If I may ask, how much more polluting is it to transport goods on a plane than on a boat?
That's a question to Tobias. He's calculating it every year.
So we once, for example, as one example, we also published that we did a calculation that roughly 20% of our goods are by air freight, and it makes roughly 80% of our logistic emissions.
Wow.
So we have a big share of sea freight. It's like 80%, and they only add up to roughly 20% of logistic emissions. There are different numbers around, but that's kind of the magnitude we are talking about. So it has a big impact, and every single piece that we do not fly saves the climate. Or it saves for the climate. So I think that's then the balance we often need to strike.
It's the evil version of the 80-20 rule.
Yes, you can say that out loud.
So, Michael, you already touched on the 3P, and for me, it would be really interesting to get your point on how you're navigating between cost pressure and also the purchasing trigger for the end consumer, and your sustainability efforts. So, how are you bringing that all to the table and making sure that it is balanced out?
Balancing out means that you for sure have that already set up in the overall strategy. I think that's point number one, and as well in the budgets. And then you can follow up throughout the year and ensure that it is already catered for and not you're coming after the fact. That means that, yes, we have our growth ambitions and our growth targets. And as well, when it comes back to, let's say, the supply chain again and what we do with our suppliers, primarily we have criteria that we have set up with our partners, which we communicate openly that these criteria have to be fulfilled to do business with us. So even if you would have been offered the best price for a product, if you are still, let's say, boiling oil and gas and are continuing to do so, we would simply not enter a business relationship. And as well for the elements that we have related to our corporate responsibility team and our corporate responsibility projects, we reserve a certain amount in our budget so that we can fulfill first of all, the requirements that we have, the legal requirements, but as well continue projects. And already we are now, let's say, purchasing already carbon credits for later removal. This is something that we have started. And in all the targets, and that's part of the WeCare strategy, as Tobias has mentioned, in all the 4 dimensions, we have targets which are annually updated, and then the teams need to follow up on them, obviously. And this starts in design, in development, in logistics, and as well in the stores, obviously, that we have this incorporated. And as I said, it's not separate anymore. I guess these days are long gone, where corporate responsibility or sustainability was separate to the rest of the organization. It's woven in, it's interlocked, and one doesn't go without the other. And to your question, what do we do at the point of sale? I think it is as well some sort of it's not really differentiating factor anymore. So we don't do a lot that we say, okay, we publicly go out and say this is certain advantages if you buy that. It is let's say visible via the hang tags. It's visible on our websites. You can go in and see, okay, what is the usage of it and what are ingredients, what is the recycled proportion. So this is what you can find. But as I said, we try to drive it more versus the brand. So via the communication we do on the brand level, we are more convinced that having the connection to the brand is more powerful and also more credible if we don't disappoint consumers. On the contrary, we excite consumers about the brand, and being known as a responsible brand is more impactful than saying, okay, this jacket has saved 1,000 liters of water, something like this. I think this is that people will forget, and it's really hard to also track and justify. Yeah, I think this is incorporated. I can give you one number and also one example for this. We just launched now for Winter 25 our new Eiger collection. So that's the pinnacle product. That's the best of the best what you can get. It's the 6th generation of Eiger product. And with this, yes, it needs to be the best collection we ever had. But at the same time, we reduced our emissions by 21% based on what we used as recycled material, how repairable and recyclable the garments and the products are. So it's not like something that's running in parallel. That's rooted when we kick off every season with our design and development teams. They go for this automatically, and we need to monitor it, sometimes remind them, but in general, as I said before, it's a community of mountain freaks who have the same objective in somehow.
Yeah, well, and along these lines, and Tobias, maybe you know more about this. Like, how are you, like, that's the thing, as Michael said, like, sustainability is now becoming more and more interlocked with all the parts of the company, all the departments, but as well, like, the products can be a great force for change and a great ambassador of the cause. I think in FMCG, they're starting to do it, but I think that in apparel, you can do it to another level. What type of initiatives are you doing? Like, I know that For example, if you Google Mammut WeCare, you find certain products that are called WeCare. So I don't know if that's a coincidence, but yeah, it's keen to know like how your products are kind of like talking out this mission that you have.
No, that's no coincidence. But I'm gonna come to that in a second. Products are super important because these are basically it's the window to our consumer, right? That's what they have in their hands. So we think there are two angles to that. One is if we really want to do progress, we need to tackle the ones with the big volumes, right? We need to change every single product needs to improve. And that's not always sexy or the message that resonates the most with the consumer. Most often it's not even stated on the product, but that moves our strategy in the right direction. And we have a great product team who've come up with a design philosophy, and they established a term called resourceful performance. So what Michael mentioned before, same performance, but in a more resourceful way than before. So that's what drives every new product development based on requirements and kind of KPIs we have, but it improves on the big scale. But we also want to have these lighthouse projects where we talk about cool things, where we try out new innovative designs or ideas or technologies to kind of make it more accessible then for the consumer. And also for the consumer to recognize us as a responsible brand. And the WeCare products are one small part of that. There's, for example, a rope is produced with leftover yarns. So every time you change the color while spinning a rope, you have a certain cutoff in the middle. And out of this cutoff, we created these WeCare ropes. So they all look completely different. So there's no pattern. Every pattern is individualistic, but that makes it also very approachable and very understandable for the consumer what the consequence is and why they love it. And it was actually quite a good selling product. So it was a win-win, I would say. On the other hand, we also have insulation jacket made out of industrial rope scraps, where we try to replace the insulation from virgin polyester to actual rope waste or leftover. So just came out very innovative. On the other hand, we also tried to bring the climate aspect more into our products. So we have, when we launched our trail running collection, we calculated the emissions that each product has and collaborated with, as Michael mentioned, Climeworks and Climate, two partners of us, where we then decarbonized or basically removed the same amount of carbon out of the atmosphere, also to kind of showcase this very complex topic on a simple product and kind of explain what it actually means. And with that, we still try to find this balance between lighthouse projects, pioneering, people going to remember, but also will not forget creating the big impact, which is not always worth storytelling, but it's something we do in a broad range of products.
So in terms of cross-industry initiatives, you already tapped onto one. Are there any more you're doing that are interesting?
I think we do so many that will kind of be beyond the limit and scope of this podcast. But
as we said, there can be a number 2. Don't worry.
We keep that in mind. No, it's similar on an industry level than internally, right? We can't solve challenges by ourselves, so we need to collaborate. And we want to collaborate because at the end, it benefits all. So there are different collaborations on different levels, from a national level in Switzerland till then global level. So very industry specific. For example, we are a member of Cascale. That's kind of the former Sustainable Apparel Coalition, a collaboration or a community of ambitious brands that really want to change how the textile industry functions, how data is shared, how we can create impact. A lot of project work and project groups come out of that, where we also work in shared facilities. So we know where other brands produce. And if we produce in the same factory, we try to align our requirements, try to align our efforts, because at the end, it's a cost saving for a supplier. It's benefiting us as well, because we reach our target. And if we have other brands as well want to do the same, if we collaborate, at the end, everyone wins. And we are the lucky ones in the outdoor industry. We are surrounded by a lot of visionary and ambitious brands. That's why we all have similar targets. We keep ourselves on our toes and find a lot of pre-competitive open collaboration in between us as brands. And I think that's really amazing. So if I have a question, I just often call up, my colleague at another brand and just ask, hey, how have you solved the problem? Because they often have similar challenges as we have. And in other cases, we are able to help. And I think that's how we all benefit.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, probably like the link that the actual product has to nature maybe makes this brand be very forward thinking. But obviously, big shout out to our audience that's in FMCG to also do these things for industry-wise. So you've set an example, which I think is great. Guys, there's one question that we ask all our guests here on the show, which is, with everything that you've learned during your careers, if you went back to yourself when you started working, whenever that was, what would be that one piece of advice you would give yourself? And it can only be one. Tobias, go ahead.
For me, I would say stay curious. That's how many wonderful doors open, how you start to understand our planet and the world around us, at least to a certain degree. And that really, makes life livable to learn new things. And I'm allowed only one advice, but to my former sustainability professionals, I think we need to say, aim big, but also celebrate the small wins. Keep track of your mental health, because it can be quite a precious job. So often go out to nature, reconnect, because it really helps you to understand why you're doing this day by day.
Tobias, you managed to put in like 5 pieces of advice, but they were all very good, so we'll allow it. Michael, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about it while Tobias is talking, and actually for me it's an actual case, because my older daughter, she's 21, she has already made the decision what to study, and the younger one, she's 18, she's just puzzling what to do. And I say it, one of my favorite movies is Star Wars. I'm really into that. And Yoda once said, do or do not, there is no try. And I love that, because I think I learned more in 1 hour of doing rather than 10 hours of thinking. So if you have an idea, try it out and find out what you would like to do. If it's working, then just continue, but don't overcomplicate things. Don't think it too much through. Just start with where you are, what you have, and then progress. And then you will find out, and that will pass away. If you have an idea, and try it out and go after it. Yeah.
This was Michael Rammelsberger and Tobias Steinegger from Mammut. Veronica, what are your key takeaways from this conversation, your debut on the FMCG Guys?
It was super interesting to get a little bit of insights in the overall sustainability efforts of Mammut, and how they are structuring all of those efforts and making sure that it has an impact. So thank you for having me, and thank you for these insights. And I absolutely loved how they structured also their efforts, and how everything they explained.
Yeah, I think the model they explained out, WeCare, where every letter, means something different. It makes it like very granular, and I feel like they're really linking it very well to like their operating model and how they do their own business.
Yeah, it's also interesting for them to see themselves as part of the overall community. So working very closely together to reach this goal, and having it in this supply chain cosmos really ingrained, and bringing that to life.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting what they said about do our best, remove the rest, which do our best is kind of like within the company. How can they be more efficient, basically? And then remove the rest, like what can they do outside of the company, like deforestation initiatives. They talked about the 3 Ps of people, planet, profit, and building. And I also thought it was very interesting how like they really like speak with their competitors in terms of like how can they jointly like raise the bar in certain initiatives.
Yeah, it's it's really creating something big, and I personally love the rope that they produced. That none was the same, but they were all individual and had an impact. So I really loved that idea, and thinking outside the box, but also bringing it to the customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know, by the way, Veronica, that you were into hiking. That's something I learned today.
Yeah, there's always something new.
Well, Veronica, thanks so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure and a lot of fun to have you on board. So thanks for filling in the big boots of Christina and Ephraim.
Really happy to help out, and speak to you soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Veronica. And thanks to all our audience for tuning in again. And we'll see you every Wednesday and every Saturday on new episodes of the FMCG Guys podcast. Have a great day.